So I'd like to call the meeting of the Appointments Committee to order. This is a meeting on May 9th, 2023. It is a remote participation via Zoom, and the link is available on the town's website on the agenda. So before we get started, I'd like to ask Cindy to do the roll call.
Councilors, Schnapp,
Here.
Shaughnessy,
Here.
Mendez,
Here.
Atsalas,
Here.
Starr.
Here.
You have full quorum.
Great. We do have public comment on the agenda. Is there anyone here who would like to make a comment before we start with our interviews? Ms. Penn, I'm assuming you're just here to observe, but if you have any comment, let me know. Hearing none, we will proceed with the agenda. So we have 4 candidates for reappointment. Our first candidate for under discussion is Mr. Tom Lee, who is currently serving on the Board of Health and whose term is expiring 6/30/2023. Welcome, Tom.
Good afternoon, all town councilor. Thank you for letting me go first on your agenda this afternoon. My name, like Paula said, is Tom Lee, but I go by my Chinese name, Fapu Lee, officially.
Okay.
But I'm an engineer by trade, especially in drinking water and wastewater. I've been a professional engineer for over 40 years. Like Paula said, this afternoon I'm looking for the reappointment interview for the Board of Health. I have been with the Board of Health since 2018 and the full membership since 2020. Currently, I'm the vice chair on the Board of Health. On the Board of Health, we will review a lot of the septic system design, repair, and the grease trap issues. And with my background, engineering background, and the job experience, I think I'm qualified to do that engineering review and make any recommendations. Also, the town is also engaging in building the town sewer, and Board of Health has also a major role in terms of connecting the citizens to the town sewer. And if I am being selected for the reappointment, I think I can help to move the process along. One last thing, with the COVID-19, we also learned that we have to rely on each other's board members' expertise and experience. So that's all my statement up front, and any questions from the councilor?
Yes, Councilor Atsalas.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lee, for being here, and thank you for serving on the Board of Health. So do you serve on other committees or commissions as well?
Yes, I'm also on the Concom and the CPC.
Okay. And how do you find your ability to split the time between those 3 very time-consuming committees?
I kind of enjoying it. I kind of, meeting all different friends from different fields, and I kind of enjoying doing this. So I don't think it's a time constraint to myself.
I just have a follow-up. So I'm going to put you on the spot. Which one's your favorite?
Which was my favorite? It's between Concom and Board of Health.
I will ask a serious question now. So with COVID, obviously, much of the work in inspectional services went remote. It seems like that's stayed the course in terms of many staff working remotely. As a result, I get feedback in my world where I work full time that the process for permitting as it relates to Title V systems for repairs, replacements and such is much slower than it ever used to be. They hasn't seen much improvement. That process may or may not be in your purview, I understand, but I just wanted to get your thoughts on that, if that's anything you've heard and what you think could be done to address that.
I think the front desk right now is handling all these applications. The only time that we see it is when the application comes through to the Board of Health, and need a determination, then we would have a chance to look at it. If we're trying to improve the process and efficiency wise, that's something that, I can work with Tom and see what step we can improve in terms of getting the process done quicker.
Yeah, I think that would, again, the feedback I'm getting from the folks in the field is Barnstable used to be, the Board of Health used to be one of the better towns on the Cape. But since coming out of COVID, it's become one of the slowest in terms of getting straightforward, simple, what used to be straightforward and simple permits done. So just more of a conversation I just want to have real quickly with you. I appreciate that you're one of those things you'll look into, but thank you. I'll yield to somebody else for now.
Thank you for your comment.
Councilor Mendez.
Thank you very much. And I thank you, Mr. Lee, for being here and of course your service. Right now in town, we seem to be village by village. The feedback I'm getting is there seems to be a lot of division. A lot of division in the direction we should take. Some villages feel that they don't have to take on some of the load of some of the issues of their village. So my question is, what is your thoughts on consensus and compromise?
I think depending on which aspect are you talking about, if I'm thinking that you were talking about housing wise, it's kind of difficult. It take a long time trying to discuss with all different villages what is the balance of, among villages. It's not a simple discussions.
I'm not talking about housing in particular. I'm talking in generalities. And the reason why I premised the question by saying what I said is that, as I said, not naming one village or the other, because every village has its issues.
Right.
It's important to me to get people in place that are willing to compromise in order to have consensus. Compromise is important, especially in government.
Well, I think from the aspect of the compromise, I don't think that I'm looking at village wise. I'm looking at each applications. If something that would benefit in terms of the citizens, the financing part of the Title V replacement system stuff, if something that we can forgive certain things, we can allow under the regulations. If we can do that, I can do that. That's all that's all I can say.
Okay, no, that's great. That you said enough. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Councilor Starr.
Thank you, Paula. So, Mr. Lee, are there many instances where you have to recuse yourself at the Board of Health because of the work you do?
Not very often, maybe once.
Okay.
Because when there is a project that Horsley Witten is involved, then I have to recuse myself.
Okay. And in terms of this, the CWMP, if we hook up 12,000 parcels, are there going to be a lot of variances that come to the Board of Health, or have you started to make some cut and dry decisions about timelines?
We kind of talking about the timelines. If the sewer is available, the citizens should be connecting within 6 months. But of course, we have to take a look what the condition is, and how the citizen is financing how to make the sewer connections. And some of these are the concern that we have to look at each individually.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Shaughnessy? You're good?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Tom, I having observed a couple of Board of Health meetings, I'm always amazed at sort of the breadth of decisions that kind of fall under the Board of Health. Sometimes you are reviewing like 5 or 6 tattoo tattoo artists that are, have to be licensed. And then there's the septic systems, and then you've occasionally been making policies on tobacco, which I think the town has made some good steps forward in that. Do you see any other sort of public health issues that might be coming before the Board of Health that don't involve septic systems or don't involve tattoo parlors?
I don't see any, but you know, some in Board of Health, our jurisdiction is quite broad
Mhm.
in a sense, like, you know, if someone come in and say, well, I have a PFAS in the drinking water, how are you going to deal with it? That's
Mhm.
something that hasn't come up individually, but you know, town right now, each water district is dealing with it. But there's a lot of private well has these issues. If it comes into play, that's something that we need to look at how we're going to deal with it in the private well.
Mhm.
But that's the first thing that I can think of.
All right. Any other questions for Mr. Lee? All good here? Okay, well, thank you, Tom. As you know, our process is to, after we've completed our interviews, have a conversation among the committee members with hopefully a recommendation that comes out and goes to the town council. The first reading will be most likely May 17th for our reappointments, with a second reading in the first week of June. So we will, with reappointments, we may not be making any communication, but in your case, because there was someone else expressed interest in this position, if we have made a determination, we will contact you sooner than later. All right.
Thank you. Thank you
All right.
all, on Counselor.
Any questions for us?
Nope.
Okay, good. Well, and off to Concom, right?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, so we now have 3 members of our current planning board who are up for reappointment. And I think everyone's here. Mary's first on our list. So Mary, would you like to introduce yourself? And if you have any comments you'd like to make before the members ask you questions, please feel free.
Sure. Thank you for having me today. Just a little bit of background on myself. I am from Marston's Mills. I'm 3rd generation from Marston's Mills. My role on the planning board has been since 2015. I've served as secretary, vice chair, and chair, and then I think for the last 4 years as a member. I have about over 30 years of experience in the water wastewater industry and civil engineering. And that experience has not only just been in New England, but also throughout the Northeast and the US. I think my overall goal is to contribute to the town. I don't work for the town, and I waited until I came out of the consulting side to apply for this position. I work now for a nonprofit. So when I was on the consulting side, all of my competitors and my clients are now all of my members. So I work for the New England Water Environment Association, which is a professional organization of engineers and scientists. I don't think I have anything else, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you, Mary. And who wants to tee it off? Nick, is that hand going up?
I may as well. It's close enough.
All right, Councilor Aslos.
Ms. Barry, thank you for being here. Thanks for your service. It looks like are you arguably, or not arguably, factually the longest serving current member on the planning board, or close to it?
I am actually, yes. Yes, I am.
Well, that in itself is an achievement worth noting. So in the time that you've been on since 2015, what changes have you noticed in what you're seeing on the planning board? It can be anything, whether types of projects that you're looking at, process, things that the board is doing well versus maybe things to improve on. I'll kind of leave it kind of open to how you want to answer that, but you've had a lot of experience. So, from 2015 to today, what have you seen?
Sure. When I came on, I was, I think I was one of the only newer members. The current that current board had been on for several years. And I think it may have taken even Felicia's position when she had moved on, or someone else's position, but that board had been on for a number of years. And so there was a lot of history there, and it was, there was a little bit of a change because I think many of the boards were, that members of that board were used to functioning in a different way. It was probably before, they had been in place before open meeting laws had been established. So I think they had just been structured and were working in a different way. In addition, we had a little bit of a turnover with the director of planning and development. So those two things during my tenure, the board had completely changed over. And I think part of that was they were looking for new people to take their places. They were committed members, but didn't want to just leave if they knew that there wasn't anybody else to take their place. And then having the benefit of Elizabeth and her crew coming on and her building up her division, I think has really helped us as board members. And the influx of the new group of people that we have now has really been, I think, a benefit, because we've got a real diverse group amongst us. And I think, you know, each time somebody leaves, like Steve Costello just left, my heart goes, oh my God, are we going to find somebody else, right, that's going to be as good? And eventually we do. So each time someone joins the planning board, I feel like the planning board gets stronger and stronger. So those are kind of the changes that I've seen. And I think we've gotten, through Elizabeth's leadership, a lot of support through that group, both whether it's legal or planning board advice and support and guidance. When I was either a chair or a vice chair or secretary, or even as a member, I feel like I'm getting the guidance that I need from the subject matter experts that are planning, that are, you know, degrees in planning and know what's appropriate and what isn't appropriate based on the guidelines in the town.
Great, well, thank you. And I have watched some meetings, and I certainly notice and appreciate you ask a lot of questions, which is a positive, because I think oftentimes, you know, folks don't ask questions to learn more about a particular item in front of them. And I have noticed that about you, and I think that's something to commend you on. So keep it up. Thank you.
I think my parents would be very disappointed if I didn't ask questions.
I'm sure.
Right. Any Councillor Mendez, Councillor Shams, anybody? I've got questions, but I want to make sure everyone else has. No. Councillor
Hi,
Shams.
Mary. Yeah,
Hi, Tracy.
thank you. I wanted to know, what do you think makes a community successful? Because like you said, you're 3 generations, you've been around a long time. I think it's sometimes hard for those of us who are born here, because for us, it's the status quo, but I'd love to hear I think we have a successful community, but what do you think builds community?
I do think we have a successful community. It's funny, the way on my consulting side, now I'm strictly in New England, but on my consulting side, I had done a lot of work in the Mid-Atlantic, and their communities are very different, right? They're county government. Okay, so here our county government's kind of not a regulatory or legislative group. It's plays less a role in our community. So it's really focuses on, it's the responsibility of the town or the city, right, to bring everybody together and to be thinking holistically about the town. I think Mr. Menendez had asked about the villages, or, you know, the division of, or the possible division of the town. I look at it as one town. We happen to have, you know, 7 different zip codes, but that doesn't necessarily mean we're not one town. So when we look at things, I have a tendency to look holistically, what's best for the members of the town. And honestly, you have to look even beyond that. You have to look at the Cape as a whole, right? We are the largest town, obviously, on the Cape, but we kind of set the trend along those lines. But I think we've got to be looking at everything holistically with regards to what's best for our community as a whole. So it's a roundabout answer to your question, but I think if everybody's looking at the town as a whole, I think we're going to make better decisions.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Counselor Starr. Unmute.
You,
Okay, here I am. So my question is about how do you see economic development move as the town moves forward? And it's that's another broad question like Tracy's, but
yeah.
any thoughts?
I don't know. I struggle with this myself. I was, I was talking to somebody else the other day is that I went to college, and as much as I would have liked to have come back to school, but come back to the Cape for my career, at the time, in the mid 80s, there wasn't really a lot of options. You'd either work on the municipal side, right, or the retail. That was in the town of Barnstable. That was kind of the prospects. Now I feel like, and I see it as the engineering firms are down there. There were a couple, I shouldn't say that, but there were no significant engineering firms that were down there, right? But now everybody's got an office down there. Same with the law firms. And of course the banks. God, there's a bank on every corner now. But the economic development, I do believe we need to be able to have a environment for people to be able to raise their family, stay, right? Or come back, raise their family, and provide opportunities for everyone to be able to have a career there, and not feel like they have to go off Cape. Like I said, a lot has changed in 30 years, from when I left, graduated from college. But this is, and that looks at housing, that looks at career opportunities, and being open for businesses to be able to establish functioning offices in and around the Cape and in the town of Barnstable. But thinking a little bit broader on what kinds of businesses we can bring, a little bit more maybe on that are not necessarily traditional tourist-based careers or opportunities. I think we had talked about this when we did the community planning update, I think in 17, is thinking about being able to bring high tech to Barnstable as an option. Obviously there's the cannabis option as a new business. I guess you could consider that a new business in the area. But to think about how do we attract businesses to Barnstable that can support careers for individuals to be able to broaden the opportunities for people to be able to live on the Cape and make a living on the Cape.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Counselor Mendez.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. Yeah, I'm a fourth generation millbilly myself. So
Oh, there you go.
yeah, you guys used to live on Main Street?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, lived right around the corner from us.
Yeah, were you on Camet?
Camet Lane, yeah.
Yeah, okay, yep.
So I usually ask about consensus, but I've seen the planning department. I've seen how you guys are, so I don't have to ask you that question. But my question is, what do you consider more important, continued growth or preservation?
I guess I would say, this is probably like people would say, I'll answer it. I think they're both important. It's hard to say one over the other. It's really, I think this comes out when we look at these regulatory agreements, right? We have zoning bylaws in place, right? People have spent a lot of time putting together the regulations. So when it comes to accepting variances or developing a regulatory agreement, I think that should be, the exception, not the rule. And I think the planning board has done, or the planning and development department has done a great job, and the town has done a great job on developing regulations that balance both, right? That support some sort of growth in and around the town of Barnstable, but also preservation of areas that are important to us as a community, that identify us of who we are as a community. We have to remember, and it's hard to do that sometimes when you're in the thick of it, but we have to remember who we are, right? And why do people want to live there, right? Why do people come to us, to the town of Barnstable? And it should be because of the history, the outdoors areas, the beaches, the downtowns. That's what it should be. It should be that kind of appealing area where people feel that there is a balance between preserving old Cape Cod, right? The town of Barnstable, but it is also, as I had said to Mr. Starr, is the ability to grow and change as needed.
Thank you.
Mary, again, I thank you for the service that you've already provided. I wanted to follow up on your comment about regulatory agreements. As we've moved toward actually creating zoning that has some more flexibility, like the downtown form-based code, do you see perhaps a reduction in the use of regulatory agreements in the town of Barnstable?
I hope so. I mean, Steve's laughing, I'm sure, and Tim probably. I mean, I think it's a great tool, but as I keep saying, it should be the exception, not the rule. Yeah. And when you keep seeing another regulatory agreement, right, then let's spend the time and change the zoning, right? Let's not just keep throwing these, regulatory agreements at it to try and work around it. If in fact it's not working, let's do something about it. Let's not just throw another regulatory agreement at it. So that's where I kind of come in.
Mm-hmm. They're very time consuming, the process.
Oh my God, they are. Yes, they are.
So, but anyway, any other that sort of answers my question. Are there any other questions from committee members? Okay. All right. I think you were online when I talked to Tom. We're going to go through this process of possibly making recommendations at today's meeting, but we will most likely inform you before it goes to the town council. So
okay, great.
But thank you. Do you have any questions of us?
No, I think that's it. So it has to be presented twice, right?
Yes, it does. So we will have most likely it'll be a first reading on May 18th, and then the second reading would probably be June 1st.
Okay, great.
So,
no,
right.
I'm good.
Thank you. So
right.
You're welcome to stay, or you can exit the meeting if you want.
No, I spent enough time with Steve and Tim.
Okay. Yeah, it's just last night, I believe.
I know.
Right? Okay.
And that was a nice short meeting.
Yeah. No solar on the agenda. So.
That's right. All right, I'm going to head out, but thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mary.
All right, take care.
All right. I get Steve, we're going to make you wait a little bit longer and put Tim in the queue. Welcome, Tim.
Hi, how are you?
Very good. Would you like to give a few introductory comments before we ask questions?
Sure.
Okay.
So I think I'm the newest member of the planning board, although I think Ray might have been only a month or two right before me. I've been on the board since fall of 2021. Mm-hmm. At that time, although I kind of took a year off, I had just moved back to the town of Barnstable prior to us living in Katuitt. We were residents of Sandwich for about 5 years, and while I was living in Sandwich, I served on the Sandwich zoning board. So we moved to Katuitt in 2019, right at the end, and I had actually applied for the planning board at that time. But then that, I think I put in my application on March 8th of 2020, and the next day, everything was shut down. And I had, about a year later, I had freshened up my paperwork and had reapplied and joined the board at that time. So my professional life, I am in construction. I have a Bachelor of Science from Wentworth in construction management. And I worked for a few years doing federal construction projects, Navy bases, VA hospitals, as well as commercial work on Cape and in New England, and actually worked on some affordable housing projects on Cape. And then I went and I was in Plymouth for about 4 years. And I was working on a large mixed residential and commercial development in Plymouth, very similar to Pine Hills. It was a cluster development. And I was there from day one and planning all the different, on the developer building side, planning all the different neighborhoods, as well as the infrastructure and the community that was being built around it. And then now for the past, I think it's been 6 years, I've been here on Cape working in residential construction. Some like commercial, but mostly residential, and our specialty is historic restoration projects. I do a lot of work, particularly in the town of Barnstable, on historic homes, and going through that whole process from day one for designing and engineering and presenting to the local board, as well as the Cape Cod Commission. And I've taken projects all the way up to the National Park Service for restoration levels. That's kind of my professional background, and I've been on the board for 1.5 years. We've gone through a few different regulatory agreements, as well as a lot of approval not required plans, some small subdivisions, and a few special permits. But we've also had the chance to modify a few sections of our town's zoning. I think the solar was mentioned. We modified that. And then unfortunately, I was unable to be part of the form-based code. That was a really cool one. I still sat on the sidelines for that. But now working alongside the historic board to kind of craft some guidelines and have some continuity between the Hyannis Historic District and the planning board for the regulations relating to that form-based code. So that's just kind of a little bit about me in general, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. Councilor Mendez.
How are you? And
I'm doing good. How are you?
Very well, thank you. I've seen you guys in action, so I don't have to ask you my boilerplate question, but this I'm curious about. What do you think is the biggest dilemma in town right now? Preservation or continued growth?
Great question. Much like Mary's answer, I also have a split feeling. We have a very unique town here because we have so many different sections with different concerns, so many different villages with different character, lots of areas to protect, but a lot of areas to incentivize development. I think our biggest problem, and I know I'm probably preaching to the choir here, our biggest problem for development versus preservation is very strongly related to our wastewater and our nitrogen issues here in town. And, some of the solutions that will help promote the growth we need in that area to limit our nitrogen reduction will put us against some of that. It might be a higher density housing in certain areas that are easier accessed by the wastewater development that's going on in the sewers. But then there are some areas where, it's almost like kind of bursting at the seams. Some areas where really that higher density development is not quite warranted because of what it passes off to the town. So I hate to just kind of cop out and say it's a case by case, but I think it's very unique to the areas of town in the areas that are kind of ripe for some development to fix some of our, issues and promote the growth that we need versus what we need to preserve for our natural resources and our community.
Yeah.
Follow
Yeah,
up?
just a kind of a comment. It's not a cop-out. It's something that, I think we're all grappling with. And because to be quite honest with you, we don't have the population to sustain, especially our elderly population right now. We don't have the population to sustain our contract population, our restaurants and stuff like that. I mean, I'm from here. Like I said, I grew up here. My father, my grandfather, my great-grandfather on both sides. So I hate to see what's happening, but sometimes the things you hate to see are unfortunate realities. So don't consider it a cop-out because I don't think anybody's comfortable with it. It's just where we're at. So thank you for your answer, though.
Thank you.
Counselor Axelis?
Thank you. Mr. O'Neill, thank you for being here and appreciate your service on the planning board. So I asked this question of another candidate or applicant, I should say, who has a similar background to yours. So there are some, how would you answer the question that somebody might ask you is, how is somebody with your background, gosh, it could be a conflict of interest having you on the board. There's some inherent benefit to you being on the planning board because of your construction background. How would you answer that? Because there seems to be a few folks out there who might feel that way.
Thank you for the question. And that's a very good question to ask. So when I was in Sandwich, I was on the zoning board, and at the time I had not really done too much construction work in Sandwich. I've worked all over the rest of the Cape and planned and developed projects elsewhere. And one of the reasons why I wanted a planning board when I came to the town of Barnstable is, we don't go in front of zoning for my professional career for what I'm doing now. We don't go in front of zoning a lot, but every once in a while we do. And it's usually with a lawyer or an architect or an applicant, and we're just kind of there on the sidelines for, informational purposes. But I thought that the planning board would be a better fit because I would have less of a conflict, and I would also, my skill set with my background in kind of commercial development, residential development, and also local historic restoration was a good need for the planning board in crafting zoning regulations and such. So luckily with my work that I'm now doing in my career, it doesn't come up against planning board regulations all that often. We're not building commercial, we're not developing condos, we're not doing subdivisions. We take on, one very particular project at a time and do a very in-depth restoration or reconstruction or expansion of that. And, I don't think professionally I've ever had to, come to a planning board, for what I'm doing now. And I don't foresee that in the future. The few times I have had, questions on conflict of interest, and there's one time I think that there's a conflict of interest 1-800 number that the state has, the dial a lawyer, you can ask a question. And I think I annoyed them because I was asking such simple questions of, I talked to them 2 years ago and they're coming in for an A&R and they say, just, file the form and with the office, we shouldn't have a problem. And usually on that, I still err on the side of recusing myself. And I think I've recused myself on 2 or 3 minors, usually an A&R plan. But so to summarize it, I don't see the work that I'm currently doing and pursuing coming in the purview of the planning board all that often. And if there ever was, I would clearly recuse myself. Yeah, I think that kind of summarizes it.
Thank you.
Counselor Starr?
Oh, I think you're muted.
You're muted, Gordon.
I'm definitely muted. Okay.
There you go.
Keeping everybody awake. So thank you for serving on the planning board. And I still feel like you're a rookie, in some level, I think I know what it's like being a town councilor. It takes it's a long learning curve to get going. But I think some of these questions are just sort of, we're curious because we've got somebody in front of us, as compared to a real interview. But I'd like to, my topic to talk to you about would be cluster housing. I don't see enough of that going on where we can cluster small houses and make them actually affordable to people who can actually buy something and get some equity. I see too many buildings that are 270 units that all that rent is going back over the bridge every day, like $500,000 a month. So it'd be nice for people to get some equity. So I hope it's a topic I wish I wish builders could bring more of those forward. Thank you.
Yeah, the cluster development is a great development method. And you can still construct homes and residential units that are kind of in keeping with our style here. On Cape, we are used to our kind of wood frame shingle houses, and most of our development that we have are single family homes on 1/4, 1/2, 1 acre lots. During the 70s and 80s, there were subdivisions coming to the planning board, nonstop, these large residential developments in town. You can drive through Centerville or Marston's Mills to it and see them all over the place. And the job of the planning board's kind of changed because we are, essentially out of clear, big developable land. So a lot of what's coming from the planning board now are reg agreements, zoning changes, maybe minor A&Rs. I mean, when we see a subdivision plan, it's a 2-lot this, or it's a modification to an old subdivision. We're not looking at 50, 80, 100, 200 home developments anymore. We're looking at a lot of unique but very challenging items. So cluster development has really taken off, off Cape. You go through Plymouth because the benefits of, okay, if we build on 1 acre and 1 acre can provide 4 homes, we could put 3 acres into conservation. There's a lot of great benefit to that, and it benefits the natural resources and it just lessens that footprint. The one problem we have in the town of Barnstable is that there are not a lot of large chunks of developable land to do that, to make the numbers work for developers. To put 3 acres of conservation, but they're buying it at such a high price here for developable land to put these units on it. And it would be a great way to find a way to incentivize that, even on a smaller scale. It doesn't need to be 20 homes, 50 homes, maybe it's, 5 homes. If you have 5 acres and you could cluster, 5 homes on 1 acre and put 4 acres into conservation, that's great. And that's something that I think should be incentivized. And, there's a few different ways to do that. And it's just it's unique because so much of our land has kind of already been used up, planned for, and it's tough to find new areas to develop that, new areas to promote that development.
Oh, I agree. Thank you.
Hey.
Appreciate it.
Councillor Shaughnessy, any questions at this time?
Sorry, I have to smile about the cluster homes, talking about 5 acres and 4 homes, because here in downtown Hyannis, myself and 3 neighbors are on what was originally a lot. Now it is 4 homes, and each of us have a 0.06 or 0.07 of an acre lot. So the idea that, oh, that's cluster housing,
Yeah.
on it, really, you get a whole 1/4 acre is, it's interesting. I did want to say to the other members of the committee, I was going to defer on questions because I think, I'm looking around trying to remember, I think one of the only original appointment committee's members. So I remember interviewing Tim. I remember, that you were a Wentworth grad, had experience both in commercial as well as residential. And you refresh my memory that you're all in historic restoration now, which I think is amazing. It's definitely not something that everyone in construction can do. But I think that's also equally important, is to restore what we have. So I just wanted to let my fellow committee members know that I recall Tim's interview. And so I was going to defer to the rest of the group who's never interviewed Tim.
Thank you. Well, Tim, I will give you the question that I gave to Mary about your opinion about regulatory agreements, and are they something that we should move beyond or tinker with on the margins, or what's your general impression?
Thank you. That was also a great question. The regulatory agreements really are one of the most powerful things that our planning board does. And, as I said, the role of the planning board has changed recently because we're getting away from subdivisions, and we have this very powerful and unique tool in this town in these regulatory agreements. And, I think Mary said that it had kind of become, almost like it was a regular occurring agreement after reg agreement for similar things. And, when you have such a powerful tool where, a lot of thought and plans had gone into the previous zoning, and now there's reason to kind of be up against it and to allow for a different type of development to be in that area. If you see it over and over again, you should kind of go back to the drawing board and say, okay, if we like the development that we are controlling in these reg agreements in this area, and we're providing the benefit to the town, we need to kind of redraw the path of our guardrails so that we can promote and allow that and control it more uniformly. Because inevitably, with such a powerful tool, when a project comes through single, there are times that sometimes the boundaries are pushed. You don't realize until afterwards that, oh, maybe that wasn't quite, and you need to kind of rein it in. So I think the form-based code in downtown Hyannis has been a great example to promote the development that we want and to allow a lot more flexibility within those guidelines. That being said, we are up against a very unique time in our town with our wastewater issues as well as our housing. Just today, I had a call from one of my contractors that 2 of their top people are quitting and moving off Cape because they can't find housing. It's a call that unfortunately I've heard a lot more from a lot of the people I work with here on Cape. So I still think that there is a home for the regulatory agreement, but we need to make sure that the benefit is there for such a powerful tool to kind of push the boundaries. We need to make sure that the town is getting enough back for what it can give in those circumstances. And then, the reg agreements, they do take a lot of time, and they can't just be rushed through the planning board. There is such a powerful mechanism that, every T needs to be crossed, I dotted, and spend the time to go through it. So the other thing is when there's reg agreement after reg agreement, it can really kind of bog down the board. So we're reviewing these nonstop instead of planning maybe new zoning changes or promoting the development that we want.
Right.
So powerful tool that I wish we could use strategically and not be such a recurring element of the board.
Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. All right. Any further questions? Okay, just looks like we've got all our answers. And Tim, you heard the process, recommendation to the council, first reading, second reading. So if you don't have any questions of us, you are free to go or hang out.
Okay, great. Thank you for everyone's time.
Okay, take care.
Bye.
All right, Steve, are you ready?
Ready, thank you.
Right, okay. So feel free to introduce yourself to the committee and we'll begin questions when you're done.
Excellent, thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me, for the opportunity and for considering me for reappointment to the planning board. I live in Barnstable Village, born and raised on the Cape, graduated from Barnstable High School. I work in Hyannis, graduated from the College of Charleston, South Carolina, degree in political science and a minor in crime law and society. When I first joined the board, it was very challenging at first. I was as much of a rookie as you could possibly get, and it was incredible how much I didn't know. And honestly, in many ways, I still feel that way a little bit because there's just so much to know. But I was fortunate to work with and, kind of have Mary and Steve Costello as mentors to watch. Mary was the chair when I first started, and within a couple meetings, Steve became the chair. So to watch the two of them hold and command a meeting was great, and was great for my development. And it was wonderful to work underneath them and to watch them, over the years. It can definitely be very kind of intense and overwhelming, especially when there are things that, you have to balance what you hear from the public, you have to balance what you feel in your heart, and you have to balance what the law is and what the regulations are. And there's some times where I really, really struggled with that and just not being able to make a decision. What is the best thing to do here? So, but after almost 4 years on the board, I feel much more comfortable now. I feel much more experienced now. As the chair, when I hold a meeting, I think maybe 2-3 meetings ago, I think I had my first meeting where I started the meeting and I didn't feel nervous. So I thought that was great, and that comfort level was really nice to have. Initially for me, it just started as something to do, but it's definitely morphed into something that I understand and realize how vitally important it is for the town. How vitally important our role is to you as counselors, as the, advisory kind of board. Ultimately, there really are very few things that we make the final decision. It's your decision. And I know that you put your trust and faith in us to vet things and really make sure that we're giving a good recommendation to town council. So I take a lot of pride in that, because I know how impactful it is. And I do watch most of your meetings, and I know how critical our work is. And I'm also very proud of kind of the current board. I think that we have an excellent dynamic. I think that we all bring something different to the table. I think we all work well together. Even when we disagree, we're civil, we're kind, we're compassionate. I think we also take our time to listen to the public and make sure that the public has, ample opportunity to speak and express themselves. I'll personally mention I am proud of my attendance rate. In the 4 years, I think I've only missed 3 or 4 meetings, and that's very difficult with a full-time job. So, I just wanted to mention that. I am also a member of the CPC, which is wonderful because I've learned so much from that board that has helped me with planning in terms of different restrictions and the methods used. So I think the two boards complement themselves very well. And I guess the last thing I wanted to say is just how thankful and grateful I am for town staff. There's no way we as planning board members would be able to do what we do without their hard work and dedication. When I first started, I'm sure many of you remember Paul Wackrow from the planning department. He and I would meet quite often, and he would take time out of his day to kind of teach me like a first grader, knowing nothing about this subject, and walking me through all of the questions I had and educating me. So just wanted to kind of finish my statement by saying how grateful and thankful I am for town staff and everything they do. So that's me.
All right. Thank you, Steve. And I see that Councillor Atzelis is ready to jump in.
Oh, actually, no, I was actually just clicking my pen. I was
Oh,
gonna
okay.
defer, I was gonna
Sorry, I missed
defer
that.
to somebody
Cue.
else and circle back.
Okay, Councillor Mendez, why don't you start?
How you doing, Steve?
Very good. Thank you. And yourself?
Good. Very well, thank you. Thank you for being here. So I'll ask you the question I asked the other two. What do you think is most dire? Preservation or growth?
Well, I have to say, this is the question. This is the question that is on everyone's mind. I'm also going to sit right on the fence because I can't fully commit to one or the other. I think the ultimate answer is caution and balance. I say balance because I think you need a little bit of both. I feel that unfortunately there are people and groups in the town who feel that you cannot have growth and also preserve the Cape. And I just don't think that's true. I think that you can strike a balance and you can be smart about, the things that you do. And I think that the town can have both and is achieving both. But obviously there's massive challenges in front of us. I fear that if the preservation route is taken 100%, I feel that that will lead to young families and the working class not being able to reside here anymore. And that's heartbreaking. You know, I grew up here, and the thought of young families not being a part of our fabric and our community is just devastating and a non-starter. So I think that there has to be some sort of balance between those two, because I think you can achieve both. And I think there are many things happening right now that are working towards achieving both. So again, I know I'm kind of sitting on the fence, but that's the best I can give you.
No, I mean, I don't consider it sitting on the fence. I mean, you're being analytical about it and you're telling the truth about it. Because I think especially us who grew up here and us who are from here, we see friends of ours who can afford to stay here, but can't find a place, plain and simple.
Yeah, well
And,
said.
you know, for us who grew up here, the Cape isn't what the Cape was to us, and it's never going to be again.
Right.
So it's important to find a balance, you know, because when you go to, you go to job sites, I'm in the glass business, you go to job sites, you know, sometimes 7 out of 10 people come from Plymouth, New Bedford, Fall River, Fairhaven, or whatever. And what does that do? It drives up the cost of the projects. It takes the money that they make out of our economy and puts it in theirs. And so it's not, you know, life isn't fair, but it's not fair for people who have always lived here, grew up here, want to stay here, but they can't. But nobody wants to see us turn into New Bedford. So that's, you know, nothing bad about New Bedford, but that's the dilemma that we have. So, you know, I don't see us sitting on the fence. You're just trying to be analytical, which is fine. Thank you very much.
Well said, and I very much appreciate that.
Yes, go for it.
That be me?
That'd be you.
Thank you. Mr. Robichaud, thank you for serving, and thank you for being here again for reappointment. So you did mention early on in your introduction that you were very inexperienced, and you looked to people who did have more experience as your mentor and learn from. What else have you done to continue your education process so so that you can continue to be an effective member on the board?
Sure, great question. I mean, I would say that the training I've done has been self-taught, you know, and really it's just looking at all of the documentations and studies that already exist. You know, that's the nice thing about towns is everything is analyzed and overanalyzed and written down. So, you know, there's plenty of resources available. You know, I'm actually very proud of my bookmarks that I have on my Google Chrome, because I have every kind of study there, and links to everything, maps and all that I can just click into it, which is super helpful, because no human being on earth is going to be able to memorize all that. So when some of that comes up in a meeting, I want to be able to have, you know, my hands on it right away. So when we get materials, you know, ahead of time, I try to set aside time over the weekend to dive in and to look at all those resources and see what of those resources applies to what we're talking about. And over time, over the course of 4 years, shockingly, I feel like I've learned a lot, and I'm much more experienced and knowledgeable in that. So I would say the answer would be self-taught, using the resources available on the town website, as well as the commission website. I am interested. I'm actually going to be meeting with Elizabeth Jenkins and Jim Kupfer later this week, just go over some things. And one of the biggest topics I have is training, because pre-COVID, there was conferences and seminars that were available to us. And we were actually set up to go to one, but unfortunately it was canceled because of COVID. So I want to learn more about what is available for in person. That, you know, I think most people learn better that way in person, to continue to add to my knowledge, because again, I do feel very experienced and qualified to do this, but I still feel like I've just scratched the surface with everything there is to know and learn.
Thank you.
Councilor Shaughnessy.
Thank you. Mr. Robichaud, how do you feel that your personal perspective has been beneficial to this committee?
Well, that's a great question. You know, I would say that having grown up on the Cape and had the experiences, you know, from childhood through adulthood, has definitely helped me. You know, I guess I personally lean a little bit more on open space, recreation, just, you know, the public services that are offered by the town that everybody benefits from, which I believe the town does very, very good at. I think the town has done a wonderful job preserving, you know, the Cape and I'm sorry, preserving the town of Barnstable and the beaches and, you know, things like that. I'm part of the working group on the historic guidelines for the Hyannis Waterfront Historic District. And past week, we took a walk around Hyannis, and it was just, you never really take the time to actually appreciate how much the town has done to make the town walkable and enjoyable. So, and I know that there's much more to be done and much more discussions related to that. But I would say, you know, the recreation, the open space, the walking trails, the beaches, the bike trails, those are the things that, you know, I really appreciate. So yeah, I would say my experience and personal perspective has definitely, you know, helped influence the things I do on the board.
Thank you.
Counselor Starr, any? No, you're good. No, okay. Won't even make you unmute. All right. Well, Steve, I just wanted to make a comment because I know how involved you've been with all the issues at the planning board, but I know with the solar array, both in terms of the zoning changes and now dealing with the special permit, that, you know, the range of now, I mean, you're having to learn about battery storage and fire hazards. And I mean, it's an endless opportunity to be learning something new. And I think we're fortunate to have staff that does bring those resources to you, but, you know, you have to ask questions to maybe even get more resources. So I appreciate that, you know, having a interest in learning and, you know, being motivated is really a good thing. I'll ask my standard regulatory question just because it's interesting to kind of get everyone's perspective on the regulatory agreement. So what do you think?
Well, I appreciate that because I'm definitely excited to share my feedback on regulatory agreements because it's just it's a love-hate relationship, to put it best. You know, I love that it exists because if you look at some of the regulatory agreements that have taken place around town, there's some wonderful, wonderful projects and sites around town that were the result of a well-executed regulatory agreement. The process can be brutal. The process can be very, very cumbersome and very, very frustrating, not just for us as board members, but for you and for applicants and for the public. It's a very challenging thing. I'm thrilled with the form-based code that has gone into effect. You know, somebody asked if, you know, it was thought that would reduce the number of regulatory agreements. Absolutely. And I think we've already kind of seen that. There's multiple projects that are already starting to work their way through, not even coming to us because now they're by right and they're wonderful projects, mixed use, a lot of housing. So, you know, I think that's a huge benefit, but I would love if there was an adjustment that could be made. You know, again, I'm not an expert at this, but I think about something like, you know, at CPC, you get a letter of intent, which is basically, it's not a full application. This is what we're thinking about doing. Let's have an informal discussion about it. So I almost wonder if something like that could play into it, where both of our boards, well, your council and our board could just get a very informal, non-binding presentation or discussion to get a sense of where people lie. But in order for that to work, our board and counselors would have to kind of, you know, offer something that the applicant really could work on. If all the board members don't really, you know, sit on the fence and don't really give any good feedback, then it's not going to go anywhere. So it's frustrating, but I know that it does have its merit and it does have value. And I hope that, like Mary said, you know, I hope that if you keep seeing the same waivers asked for again and again, it may be time to look at the zoning and say, is this something that everybody feels would be beneficial to change with the zoning, which is exactly what happened with the form-based code. And we're already seeing the benefits of that. So.
Right. Good. Well, thank you, Steve. Any other questions? Okay, well, you know our routine. We'll be discussing everyone's appointments or reappointments at the end of this meeting, and hopefully we'll have something before the town council at our May 18th meeting. So,
That sounds great. Thank you all so
All
much
right.
and
Okay.
for your work to the town. Thank you.
all right, take care, Steve.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right. So now we move on to the rest of our agenda, and just to kind of brief all the committee on how it's sort of organized, is we have a large motion, which is a consideration of reappointments to board committees and commissions for all those positions where there wasn't anybody who was requesting consideration for those vacancies. Anybody who was, we've pulled out so that we can, discuss separately. So anybody as a reappointment to the planning board, obviously, that's going to be a separate conversation. Now, that doesn't mean that this is something that we have to uniformly approve and move on to the council, but we should make a motion to discuss it. You make a motion and then a second. And hold on one second. Oh dear. Could you excuse me for 1 second? I do have to take the. Thank you. All right, so we will go through that process of the reappointments, and then we'll move into recommendations from the interviews that we've had over the last 3 meetings. We'll talk about initially the vacancies that exist, and then we'll talk about consideration of reappointments for those committees where there were multiple candidates for those reappointments. Before we move on to that, I have tentatively scheduled a meeting, our next meeting for June 6th. That would be the first Tuesday, not the second Tuesday. And I just want to get the feelings of the committee, if that's okay. The reason I'm doing that is because our first town council meeting is on the 1st, and our second one of the month is on the 15th. And in order for us to do any business that would go to the council on the 15th, we'd need to meet on the 6th. So, Nick?
If we can finish by 5:30 on the 6th,
Okay,
I will be there.
Okay.
I have a scheduled meeting the first Tuesday of the month, ongoing at 6 p.m. So if
Okay.
we can be finished by 5:30, that's fine.
okay. And Jeff?
I have a consultant job on the West Coast,
Mm,
supposed to fly out the 6th, but I can see if I can push it to the morning of the 7th.
okay, so let us know. This is a tentative time, but we may not have much business to conduct, so but I just want to make sure that if we do meet, it is something that we can move our business to the council during the month of June. So, all right, so now back to the item C, which is the consideration of reappointments to boards, committees, commissions. Would somebody like to move consideration of these reappointments? And
I have a
Mass?
question, Madam Chair,
Sure.
before we go there.
Yes, Nick.
If after looking at this group, there is someone on the list that one of us feels shouldn't be reappointed, how do we handle that?
I would say that we could amend this motion to take them off. I don't think we're at a point where we have to bifurcate
Mhm.
this, because we're not at the council level yet. So
So I would
if
want to go on record then, if I'm following process appropriately, that I would not I would not vote to recommend Francis Parks as a regular member of the Historical Commission.
okay.
And if you need reasoning, I'd be happy to provide it. But if you don't, I'm at your wishes.
I'm trying to think what's the cleanest way to do this. Would you like to make a let's have somebody move all of this, because I think it'd be cleaner to amend it. And if we agree.
Okay.
Okay,
I'd be happy to make a motion to recommend all of the reappointments listed in section C, with the exception of Francis Parks, if that's appropriate. And if that's the proper motion. that you're
I
looking
think it's better to have someone else make the motion,
for. Okay.
and then you can come back and amend.
Sure.
Gordon?
So I'll make the motion to approve all the reappointments in section C to commissions and boards.
All right, do I have a second?
Second.
Second, okay. Now we have discussion, and if you would like to,
Yes, I would like to. What's that?
I just want to make sure, Tracy, do you have a comment on this process?
I did. I just wanted to ask, with regard to all of the reappointments, were the chairs of committee reached out to see if they had any comments on these? In other words, were all the reappointments supported by the chairs of the committees? I guess that's what I'm really asking.
So Cindy would know that.
Yes, the
Answer.
chairs were reached out to. Anything that was negative was sent to the committee.
I believe Ms. Parks is actually the chair of that particular committee.
I believe she is.
Yeah, so I don't know that you get it.
So that would not be a good standard to.
Right. Right.
So. Any other discussion, or Nick, feel free to.
Yeah, so I'd like to offer an amendment that Francis Park not be recommended to a term expiring 6/30/2026. I have done a little bit of homework.
Let's take a second first.
Yep,
Does anybody want to second that? Okay, we have a second. Okay, go
second
ahead.
that.
Yeah, I've done my own homework. I've paid attention a bit to this commission, and the feedback that I've received, and also just my own viewing in that the meetings are not run appropriately. And it's very disorganized at best. And it seems that the rules of order are not followed. It leads to, and it has led to changes in how votes have been made, following through on votes, changing votes. And this is while this particular person has been the chair of the committee.
Gordon?
Is it possible to interview this person, or how do we, I don't know how to move forward here.
Well, what we could do is we could remove her from this group and request her to interview for her reappointment at our next meeting. So that, if you don't feel comfortable making this decision to not consider her at all for reappointment, we can at least take her out of this bunch and then bring her back for an interview.
I would be happy to amend my motion as you've described it, to remove her from this group of recommendation and request that she come in to re-interview with us.
Okay. Jeff, do you want to second that or have a comment?
I have a comment. First of all,
Okay.
I think it's important for her to be able to defend herself.
Right.
So yeah, I would second it, and I would like her to come in and interview. I think it's important for her to defend herself.
All right. So.
We need to do a roll call vote.
So
roll call
I've
vote.
amended, so you have my amended vote motion to have her come in and meet with us again, and meet with us, correct?
Right.
Okay.
So
I
we've
think
amended
that-
the amendment. Tracy,
I think the Attorney Nober way of doing that would be for Nick to withdraw
right?
his original
All
amendment
right, right.
and make
So
a
I
new
will-
motion.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
So I will withdraw my original amendment, and the new amendment that I would like
Wait,
to
wait,
offer.
Nick, hold on.
Yeah,
Okay, you're
sorry.
withdrawing it.
Yep.
Now we need a second.
Sorry, yeah, sorry.
Second.
Second. Do we need to take a vote on that?
We do because we're in Zoom.
Okay.
Okay, so
So it
let's
needs-
take a vote on the
so it needs to be
withdrawal of the,
recorded.
okay, just to,
Counselors, on the amended item number C, reconsideration of reappointment, removing Francis Parks.
no. oh. We're
Go
just
ahead.
we're just withdrawing that.
Okay,
And I don't know if we have to vote on a
no,
withdrawal.
not if you're just withdrawing it, but
Okay.
you do if you decide to make a motion and
Okay,
withdraw
so
her,
we
you need
withdrawn.
to- Yep,
We've had a first and second. Now Nick can go back in with a different amendment.
correct.
So my new amendment would be to remove her from this, Francis Parks from this list for reappointment and allow her and invite her in for the opportunity to be interviewed for reappointment.
And do we have a second? Anybody?
Second.
We have a second. All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, let's take a roll call vote on this amendment.
Counselors, Schnapp,
Yes,
Shaughnessy,
Yes,
Star,
Yes.
Atsalas,
Yes,
Mendez.
Yes.
It's unanimous. I will reach out to Ms. Parks and ask her
no,
to come in.
not yet. Okay, yes, okay. All right, now we go back to the
Original.
amended motion. Unless somebody has any questions on anyone else.
No.
We're good, we're good else. Okay, so as amended. We're gonna take a roll, Tracy.
sorry. I know we've amended. I'm still curious to hear Counselor Atsalas's rationale.
I already gave it.
Sorry.
Uh,
I already gave it.
If I were to kind of summarize your rationale.
I'll
as a lot
summarize.
to-
I can summarize it. I can summarize
Okay.
it. I've watched meetings. I have received feedback from others on the board that the meetings are poorly run. The rules of order are not followed. And it's happening at the behest of, or at the leadership of Ms. Parks as chair. So there's, anyways, that's my rationale in brief.
All right,
It's leading to a lot of confusion back and forth, lengthy meetings, indecision, changes of positions, not following through on votes that are made on particular items. So, and in some cases, influencing how other members are voting. Simple.
Nick, do you know offhand how long she's been chair of the committee? I mean, that seems like it's,
I do not.
all right,
I do not know how long she's been chair.
okay. We have an amended motion. Cindy can have a roll call vote.
Counselors, Shaughnessy,
Yes,
Star,
Yes.
Atsalas,
Yes,
Mendez,
Yes.
Schnapp.
Yes,
It's unanimous.
okay. We're going to move on to D, recommendations from appointments committee to the full council. First under consideration would be current vacancies. First up is the planning board. We have a current vacancy. We have had 3 candidates interview for this position. At our first meeting in April, Matthew Teague interviewed with the committee. At our second meeting in April, we had 2 candidates, Felicia Penn and Stacy Gunther. Yes, Stacy Gunther. And I would like to recommend that we have a conversation and go from one counselor to the next, or one committee member, on who they would like to put forward for this vacancy. This is, you know, and your rationale for that decision. Do I have someone who'd like to start? Counselor Mendez?
Sure. I'd like to put forward Matthew Teague. He's immensely qualified. He checks all the boxes. And he seems to work well with others, which is important to me. The planning board as it's constituted now, I agree with what they said because I watch a lot of their meetings. They may have disagreements, but they don't get disagreeable. And I think with the kind of overall vibe of the town right now, where there's deep divisions on different things, I think it's important for us in leadership to not be disagreeable all the time. I mean, people can have differences of opinions, but you don't, there's no reason to be disagreeable. So I think Matthew Teague is more than qualified. And from what I've heard, he's also the type that's not disagreeable, which is very important to me. Of course, qualifications trump everything, but I think he has the right temperament at this point in time.
Thank you. Counselor Atzelis or Nick?
I would also recommend Matthew Teague. You know, Mr. Robichaud brought up a couple things that I highlighted in my notes. You have to balance what you hear from the public, what's in your heart, and the regulations. That to me equals being impartial. I think it's important that we have somebody on the board, people on the board who are impartial. He also mentioned that he's proud of the board because they're civil, kind, compassionate. and respectful. Even when you disagree, being respectful is important. But again, disagreements are going to happen. But I believe, based on his background, he's a strong fit. His previous experience on the planning board, I think, is important. Again, the impartiality I see there, I think, is very important, and for the board to continue to function appropriately. And let's not forget, he obviously has a great interest in this. He didn't submit his application at the 11th hour. He's been waiting in the wings for well over a year to get back on. So that type of commitment, certainly to me anyways, shows something. So thank you.
All right. Gordon or Tracy, do you want to weigh in? Gordon?
Wait a second. Okay, I'm here. I don't have to unmute. I think Matt and Felicia are both have been chairs of the planning board. Both are well qualified. I could go either way. I know that Felicia's got a lot of energy. Has people say that you're saying that Matt Teague isn't disagreeable, so I just leave it at that. So I could go either way there. I think Stacy is well-meaning, but obviously not as qualified as either of those two. Thank you.
Thank you. Tracy?
I would agree to a degree with Councilor Starr's assessment. I think of the candidates that we interviewed, most certainly Mr. Teague and Mrs. Penn are at the front of those candidates in terms of their qualifications, knowledge of the town, those sorts of things. I think for me, well, two things. One, this is the second or third time that Mr. Teague has applied since 2019. And so he has been waiting and he has been trying to get back on. And I think the other thing is, I read an opinion piece that was written by Mrs. Penn that I just found disheartening, in the sense that I guess I always grew up, rather as a young adult, I always felt I did not have enough experience and therefore there was no point showing up at meetings and there was no point commenting because the grown-ups or, the people that were professionals were going to make better decisions than me. Now that I'm in that seat as a town councilor and older and have a little more perspective on life, I feel like, particularly in this town, it is important to try to get as much input as we can, whether we do or not, whether it's a small group that's heavily invested and involved or not. But I think it's important to have a spirit where we want everyone to participate. Whether they have the resources of time and money, whether they're young or old. I think, everyone's voice is important to creating a successful meeting or a successful community. And I think for that reason, I would support Matt Teague.
I'd also like to weigh in. I agree with my fellow counselors that we have a wealth of good candidates for this vacancy. I think Stacy, I'm hoping we can find a good position for her to jump into, because I think her enthusiasm and dedication to the town is very strong. But I think when we have two candidates that have very extensive experience on the planning board and bring a lot to the table, that I would choose between those two. And then that's when it gets difficult. I look at diversity on the board, both geographic and as an important criteria. But I also look to how can we maximize the number of voices that are contributing to what we're doing. And I'm very glad that Felicia has an opportunity on the local comprehensive planning committee to have that voice. Matt currently doesn't have that sort of opportunity. And I think, as Tracy said, he has put forth his application several times. So, if I'm weighing, how I'm going to make that decision between two candidates that I think both would make good contributions to the planning board, I would agree with my fellow committee members to put Matt Teague forward at this juncture. So it looks like we're fairly in agreement. And if someone would like to make a motion to that effect, I would entertain that. Nick, or Councilor Atlas?
Yep, I'll make a motion to recommend Matt Teague to fill the vacancy on the planning board.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Cindy, could you take a roll call vote, please?
Sorry, what's the term?
Oh, good question.
It's 6/2026.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So Cindy, whenever you're ready.
I stand corrected, Councillor Shaughnessy. I just looked at it. It's 2024. He's backfilling a position that somebody moved to Florida.
Thank you. Just wanted,
Yeah. make sure-
So his position will end in June 30th of 2024.
thank
All right,
you.
you want me to add that to my motion?
Yes, please.
And that's June 20th, 2024. I will make a motion to recommend Matthew Teague to fill the vacant position on the planning board until June 20th, 2024.
Second.
Councilors Schnapp,
Yes.
Atsalas,
Yes.
Starr,
Yes.
Mendez,
Yes.
Shaughnessy.
Yes,
It's unanimous.
Thank you. All right. The next. Where did here it goes.
Right.
The next position is infrastructure and energy. We had one candidate at our last meeting, Lawrence Hurwitz, who expressed interest in that committee. And I don't know if anybody would like to discuss his candidacy. Gordon, if you have any insight on whether he'd be a good fit?
Let me find my notes here. Too many notes there,
Yeah.
he's an electrical engineer, Gordon.
Yeah. Wait a second, I got it. Wait a second.
If anyone else wants to make any
Yeah,
comment,
yeah,
that-
here we go. Yeah.
okay,
Hurwitz, what's his first name? Excuse me?
Lawrence
Okay.
or Larry, I'm not sure if he
yeah.
went,
You know, I mean, a lot of what this committee does has to do with electric vehicle charging, solar energy, and I think an electrical contractor might bring some down to earth, solid information and facts to a discussion.
so would you like to move his
Okay,
candidacy forward?
I'll make a motion to move Larry Hurwitz to become a member on the Infrastructure and Energy Committee.
Second,
Wait, to a term ending. Do we know?
Yep, let me get that information for you, because there's
Thanks.
several positions there.
There's so
open.
many.
We do it one shot.
pause.
What happens when you've had 3 meetings with the different candidates?
Yeah. Thank you.
Actually, there's 2 vacancies. I guess I would opt for the one that's 6/2024.
Okay,
Yeah, the one that expires this year, 2023, goes to 2026, but there is one open currently till
Oh.
6/2024.
Could we do that? Put him in the 6/2023 and then it just automatically rolls over? Or
It
do we
will
have,
roll over on the 30th. If, well, pending there's no issues or problems with the candidate, if somebody says that, you know, they don't think he's a good fit, or the chair, or. But yeah, technically, his term, the term that's open expires on 2023, and it is renewed for a 3-year term on June 30th.
should Gordon amend his motion to say appointing for this term ending 6/2023 and a reappointment to that position ending 6/2026 so that we
Right,
kind
because
of,
we'll have to list that on the agenda on the next meeting for the appointments committee. If you put him in that spot, you'll have to consider him for reappointment.
so moved. Can I say? So I don't have to repeat that.
okay. Well,
So are you putting him in the 2023 or
Yes.
the 2024?
2023.
with the understanding that he would be
Yes.
up for reappointment
Right.
for the full term.
As stated,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, very
All
good.
right. Do I have a second on that?
I second that.
All right. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Counselors, Starr,
Yes,
Mendez,
Yes.
Shaughnessy,
Yes,
Atzelis,
Yes,
Schnapp.
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Okay, I have next a position on the Shellfish Committee for a family member holding a permit. Is that how we're characterizing this meeting, this position?
That is correct, Madam Chair.
And that vacancy is, when is that term for?
$2025.
Okay, for 6/20. So to remind the committee, we had a candidate, Glorianne Hurwitz, that expressed interest in the Sandy Neck Board, Shellfish Committee, Water Quality and Waterways Committee. The Sandy Neck Board does not have any vacancies because the reappointments on that committee require you to be a member of another committee. Our Water Quality Committee is no longer, well, it's not functioning at the moment. Waterways, we actually have one person up for reappointment who is the chair of that committee. He has not, he has confirmed his interest, but he hasn't been able to get back to us. So it's difficult to interview for that position at this point in time. So I would recommend that we appoint Glorianne to the Shellfish Committee at this meeting and keep open the possibility if she wants to be on the Waterways Committee, you know, that we can interview the the other, the chair at our next meeting, if that's wants to move forward. So that's just a thought. Or Jeff?
No, I think that sounds fine.
Okay,
So I'll make a motion to appoint Gloria Ann Hurwitz to the Shellfish Committee to a term ending June 30th, 2025?
yes,
Okay, I got it. Good.
Second,
we have a first and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Roll call vote, please.
Counselors, Starr,
Yes.
Mendez,
Yes.
Shaughnessy,
yes,
Atzelis,
Yes,
Schnapp.
Yes.
It's unanimous.
All right, and now we have Kevin Ferreira was an applicant as well. He had expressed interest in the CPC, the historical, the planning board. But our conversation, and I think his interest seemed to land on the Hyannis Main
Right.
Street Waterfront Historic District Commission. So I'd like to put forth for discussion if the committee feels that that would be a good spot for Mr. Ferreira, or if we should consider, yeah, Nick.
and that's I'm sorry, and that's sorry, a term ending when?
That
There's two at 6/20/23 that are alternate members.
And that's for the Hyannis Main Street Waterfront Historic District
That's correct.
Commission? And those are alternates.
Those are alternates.
Okay.
So we've actually filled that committee with
With
all
your
the other,
last, yes, Mr.
Yeah.
Colley
okay,
was the last one.
okay. My understanding with that committee, that's a frequent movement between alternate and full committee member, given
Yeah.
there's a
Yeah.
lot of movement there. Would we,
So-
go
Yes,
ahead,
there
Nick.
is going to be an opening at the end of June. Mr. Destopoulos has chosen not to re-up his term. But when there's alternates on a committee, you have to email the chair and ask her if there's any alternate currently sitting that would like to become a full-time member.
I see,
So we can't place them in there right now so the alternates are the only ones that are open.
okay,
Okay, so I'll make a motion to recommend Kevin Ferreira to the Hyannis Main Street Waterfront Historic District Commission as an alternate member, the term ending June 20th, 2023.
is there a second?
Second.
second,
Did we need to amend that to allow him to be reappointed after that?
They'll have to go on an appointments committee agenda for you to do that for. You can't carte blanche it right now and say that he can move into that spot. So you'll have to,
No,
Put
not,
those-
not that, but just that he would remain an alternate. Or,
he'll remain an alternate till 6/30/2023, and then he'll go on your appointments committee agenda for reappointment for another term till 26.
when will that happen?
When your next appointments committee meeting happens. Because we still have people for reappointments that have not gotten back to me. They're gonna
Okay.
be listed on another agenda for consideration that are currently sitting on
Okay,
committees. So this isn't the whole list of
Okay.
reappointments. There are more that people have not gotten back to me yet.
okay. I know that we just, on the Infrastructure and Energy Committee, we just appointed someone with the term 6/23, and then,
They'll have to be put on an agenda for reconsideration of reappointment at the end of June, at the end of June.
but they'll be sitting on the committee and they serve until we do the reappoints. Okay,
Correct.
we'll do whatever it takes.
Yeah,
right.
everybody that's currently sits on a committee right now,
Mhm.
if their term expires June 30th, they sit there until there is a reappointment.
Okay.
Or a new applicant takes their place.
Gotcha. All right. All right, so we have a motion. Who seconded that? You, Jeff. Okay, so we have a first and a second. Hearing no more discussion, a roll call vote, please, for Mr. Ferrera on the Hyannis Main Street Waterfront Historic District Commission as an alternate member.
Councilors, Starr,
Yes,
Mendez,
Yes.
Shaughnessy,
Yes,
Apsalis,
Yes,
Schnapp.
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Okay, now we're moving on to consideration of reappointments. We have 3 members of the planning board that are up for consideration. We interviewed all 3 of those today. We could consider not only those 3 candidates, but the other 2 that applied for the vacancy, because that could carry over. So that would be Ms. Penn and Ms. Gunther. So what I'd like to do is fill each one separately. So if we could just have a quick recommendation for the position number 1 on the planning board, would someone like to make, Gordon?
I make a motion to reappoint Mary Berry to the planning board
second,
to a term ending.
Second.
Do we need a term?
yes,
6/20/26.
Yeah, they're all 6/20/26, 26/20/24.
Any discussion? 26, yes.
I second that.
No, it's 24. 6/20/24 is what I,
No, that was the vacant, that was the
that was the
vacancy.
vacancy. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
A reappointment is a 3-year term, so it'd be 2026.
Okay.
All right. Is there
Okay.
any discussion? Hearing none. Cindy, could you do the roll call vote, please?
Councilors, Starr,
Yes,
Mendez,
Yes.
Shaughnessy,
yes,
Apsalis,
Yes,
Schnapp.
Yes.
That's unanimous.
All right, for the second position, we have 4 remaining candidates. Would anybody like to recommend one of those 4? I'm gonna go with Tracy and then.
Fine.
Okay,
I'd like to move Tim O'Neill to a reappointment to the planning board to a term expiring 6/2026.
I have a second.
second.
right, any-
Councilors,
Wait, well, hold on. Any rationale? I should have asked that for Mary, but just, do you have any comment that you'd like to make, Tracy, in support of your nomination?
Well, I think Tim has a great background for the planning board. I also think the fact that Tim has only been on a year and a half, just getting started, just getting going. I think it's important for continuity, but also I like to, I feel like if people are putting their neck out to serve on a committee, then I think pulling them after a year and a half. I don't know if disingenuous is the right word, but I'd like to see him continue and see what the future holds for him.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or discussion? Seeing none. Cindy, the roll call vote, please.
Councilors, Starr,
Yes,
Mendez,
Yes.
Shaughnessy,
Yes,
Apsalis,
yes,
Schnapp.
Yes.
It's unanimous.
All right, we have 1 position left on the planning board. Anybody like to offer a candidate? Nick,
I would like to recommend Stephen Robichaud to the planning board, reappointment, term ending 6/20/26.
do I hear a second?
second.
Nick, would you have any comment or rationale for your nomination.
Yeah, yes, Mr. Robichaud certainly, some things that stood out were his strong desire to learn from others who had more experience and knowledge on the board, and he's taken upon himself to continue in that trend. The things that really caught my ear were, his way of being impartial, that he has to, balance what's in your heart, what you hear from the public, and the regulations, and that the board seems to work, with a common goal in mind, and they're civil, kind, compassionate, and respectful. That's very important.
Thank you. Any other comments? Jeff?
Yeah, just really quick. I want to echo what Nick said, and as you all know, I believe that being able to get along is important, and everybody has their own opinions, but being disagreeable is a cancer. And we have a lot of things going on in this town right now, and it's important for us to at least show the public that we can disagree but still get along and not be disagreeable. So I concur with what Nick said.
Great. All right. And again, I don't think that our decision to reappoint the 3 current members of the planning board is any comment on other people interested in the planning board, but I think that in my observation of the several planning board meetings, I am very impressed with the amount of preparation that the planning board members have, and as Steve said, that they bring, all of themselves to these decisions. It's not just, they really are taking in the community input, the analysis that has to be done. And so I would definitely support Steve's continued presence on the planning board. So Cindy, roll call vote, please.
Councilors, Starr,
Yes.
Shaughnessy,
Yes.
Atsalas,
Yes.
Mendez,
Yes.
Schnapp.
Yes.
It's unanimous.
I'd like to skip Conservation Commission for just a second and go to Board of Health and see if there's a recommendation for either reappointment or appointment to that position. Tracy?
I'd like to move to reappoint Tom Lee to a term expiring 6/30/2026.
Do I have a second?
Second.
First and second. Tracy, do you have any rationale or for your nomination?
I think Mr. Lee has not only done a very good job balancing the committees that he's on, but I also think he brings a lot of impartiality and constructiveness to the committees. So as the current chair, I also think continuity is important. So for that reason, I support his reappointment.
Any other counselor discussion?
No.
Okay. See, Jeff, you're good, or do you have a?
Yeah, don't worry about it.
Okay, all right. Cindy, roll call vote, please.
Councilors, Starr,
Yes.
Shaughnessy,
Yes.
Atsalas,
Yes.
Mendez,
Yes.
Schnapp.
Yes.
It's unanimous.
I'd like to if someone would like to move that we, how do I want to say this? Move or continue the reappointment of the waterways position to our next meeting. Tracy.
I'd like to move to continue consideration of the waterways reappointment to our next meeting on June 6th.
Do I have a second?
Second that.
All right. Any discussion? See none, roll call vote, please.
Councilors, Starr,
Yes.
Shaughnessy,
Yes.
Atsalas,
Yes.
Mendez,
Yes.
Schnapp,
Yes.
it's unanimous.
Okay, last but not least, Conservation Commission. Just to remind everyone, at our last meeting, we interviewed the 2 current members of the Conservation Commission. Previous to that, we interviewed 3 candidates that were interested in being on the Conservation Commission. And I would like to have a little bit of discussion on how we would like to approach this. We have 2 positions. The 2 members have served for, both of them have served for a long time. And that obviously speaks to their dedication and merit, but there may be some issues where we want to actually bring forth some newer perspectives on the commission. That's just my something to consider. We also have one of the candidates who's up for reappointment who has received a letter of support from the current chair, which is Tom Lee. And the other person up for reconsideration has not received a letter for support from the chair, but has received a couple letters of support from community members. So I would like to open it up for discussion with the committee.
Mhm.
Gordon?
I guess I'll say it out loud. Larry Moore and some members of the Conservation Commission have reached out to me because they found him hard to work with, and to use I think Nick's word is disagreeable.
That's
so-
Jeff's. That's Jeff's.
Jeff's word,
No plagiarism here.
Come on,
Um,
Gordon, give me a little bit of credit.
No, okay. You can have it. So that's just my feedback. I would throw that in the mix. How's that?
Jeff?
I just wanted to say, I think it speaks volumes when the chairman of the committee gives a recommendation on one person, not another. So I think that's something we should take into consideration.
Tracy?
I would tend to agree to defer to the chair of the committee because, they're the person working with the various members each and every month, year after year, and I would defer to their knowledge of those people and their workings on the committee.
All right. With that said, would anyone like to nominate anyone for the Conservation Commission?
I would nominate John Abadili to a term ending
6/2026.
6/2026. Thank you.
Second,
And Gordon, in light of how we were doing with the planning board, do you have any rationale or support for your nomination?
Well, I think he was supported by the chair, so I put a lot of weight there.
Okay.
So does Jeff. Yeah.
Any other comments from the committee? Seeing none, Cindy, could you do a roll call vote, please?
Councilors, Starr,
Yes.
Shaughnessy,
yes.
Atzelis,
Yes.
Mendez,
Yes.
Schnapp,
Yes.
it's unanimous.
All right, we have one other position on the Conservation Commission. Gordon?
Before I make a motion, I'm swaying toward Jeffrey Koschulek. He's involved with plants all the time. He knows his wetland plants. I think he's got a real strong interest in the Conservation Commission.
Tracy?
I would tend to support Counselor Starr on that. I think Angela Tangy is also qualified, but I think in terms of experience, I think the prior candidate had more experience, even though she has a background in biochemistry and, was a science teacher for a long time. I think that Mr. Koshulik's knowledge of, his background and degree was in land management, preservation. So I think that experience, since I think a lot of what COMCOM deals with are replanting after doing something, having to replant, having to look at how close it is to the water and how soil works even. I think, those are all items within his wheelhouse of professionalism and expertise. So I think of the three that we interviewed, he is, I believe, the most qualified.
Gordon?
So I also would put in a plug for Angela Tangney. She's she's a retired school teacher. She's actually been has watched a lot of Conservation Commission meetings. They always need people who know the science background of what they're doing. But so she's also a good candidate.
Any other committee member comments? Nick?
For many of the reasons that my fellow committee members mentioned, I would support recommending Jeff Koshulik to the Conservation Commission.
Jeff, any strong opinions either way?
I think they're both qualified. So I'd be happy with either, to be quite honest with you.
I'm actually going to weigh in here a little bit as liaison to the Conservation Commission. I think by far, this is the heaviest lift of all of our committees and commissions. And I agree that Jeff would bring a lot to this committee. I am a little concerned that he might be overcommitted during some parts of the year, given his, business. And versus Angela's, probably having more time to devote to this endeavor. So again, I think he said that this was his crunch time, and the work of the Conservation Commission doesn't ever cease. They have 3 meetings a month. They frequently do site visits. There's a huge learning curve. In addition, yes, that base knowledge of plant, that'd be great. So, I just wanted to put that caveat in that my concern is who really has the ability to kind of devote to it. So, Gordon.
Can I make a motion to appoint Angela Tangney to the?
You can make that motion.
I'm going to make
Somebody
that
wants to second it.
to a, when does it end? It is end June, 06/2026? June 6th, 2026.
We have a motion. We need a second.
Yes, it does go to 6/2026, Counselor Starr. It's a reappointment.
Thank you.
Or
I'll second.
He'd be filling
Okay.
a reappointment, I'm
All right.
sorry.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Any further discussion? Not hearing any. Cindy, a roll call vote.
Counselors Starr,
Yes.
Shaughnessy,
Yes.
Apsalis,
Yes.
Mendez, Schnapp.
Yes.
It's unanimous.
All right, we've done the heavy lifting, folks. Thank you. My plan is to contact those individuals who are not reappointed to their various committees and just thank them for their service. I probably will reach out to Jeff, also, because I think this was a decision that was tough, and it had nothing to do with our interest and his qualifications, but to ask him to stay interested and, maybe wait for another, next year there could be another opening in the Conservation Commission. So it just might be a good timing for him. I have before we move on to approval of the minutes, I am actually not going to be at the meeting on May 18th when this is going to be presented. Does anyone want to volunteer to read the charge?
I'm going to recommend the longest standing committee member.
Looks like Tracy, you're getting it. Are you willing to?
I volunteer to
Okay.
represent the team.
Okay, thank you so much. All right. So we'll
Thank
do
you so
that.
much, Counselor Atzelis. I have a very good memory, although you might not have noticed that in this meeting.
I'll take my chances.
All right. Well, Cindy has prepared the minutes from the April 25th meeting, so we might as well get that off our plate. Would anyone like to move approval of those minutes?
So moved.
Second,
Discussion, seeing none. Roll call vote, please.
Counselors, Starr,
Yes.
Shaughnessy,
yes.
Atzelis,
Yes.
Mendez,
Abstain.
Schnapp.
Yes.
Okay, and just for clarification, Madam Chair, you do not want me sending out any correspondence until after you and I have had a conversation tomorrow.
Thank you. Yes,
All right,
We
very
will.
good,
we will figure out what the communication plan is. So.
very good.
All right, great. So until further notice, we're scheduled for June 6th, but Jeff, let me know if you're able to change your, we definitely would like you to be having, it's, I think, important to have a full committee whenever possible. So,
Yeah, I'll let you know. It shouldn't be an issue, but
Okay.
I just got to double check.
okay, all right,
Okay.
great.
All right.
Well, it's just a tad after 6. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
All right. Any,
Counselors, Starr,
Yes.
Shaughnessy,
Yes.
Atzelis,
Yes.
Mendez,
Yes.
Schnapp.
yes.
You are adjourned at 6:03 PM.